I'm honored and humbled to be here this morning with all of you. Welcome. At this time, Peoria County Sheriff's Department present the colors. Please welcome Senator Dave Kaler for our invocation.
I'm taking words from Audette Fulton and my own words, and I ask you to join me in prayer. Today, O God, we bow our heads in recognition of the great service and sacrifice some have been asked to make. Living through the horror that is war, facing death or physical harm as a specter looming around any corner, we say thank you and know that it will never be enough. Help us to embrace those we have sent forth in our names into danger. Give us the strength of will to serve them as they have served us. May they never hunger, may they never thirst, may there always be meaningful work for their hands, and may they receive health care in abundance. And may we, as the grateful heirs of a nation built on the idea of liberty, be faithful to pursue that dream in our own lives and actions. Help us to be vigilant and never complacent. Let each one of us take personally this charge. And upon this occasion, I ask, O God, you to bless this memorial that we dedicate here today. May it serve in an honor and a tribute for the service these brave men and women have given to our nation, and for some even until their last breath. May it serve as the heartfelt thanks that the people of this community give to our heroes. And may we always remember in this generation and in those yet to come the sacrifices they have made. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Senator. At this time, I'd like all of us not standing to please stand for a big round of applause for Steve Simon. May you be seated. Although I was an advisor to the committee, I went to a few meetings, drank some coffee, listened to the conversation, watched the progress, but Steve did it all. Steve was the yeoman who was able to withstand the criticism, endure it with patience, go forward with what was necessary to be done day in and day out. And believe me, I saw it. I saw his perseverance. I saw his energy. I saw his thoughtfulness. And believe me, all of this for days rested on Steve's shoulders as he proceeded tirelessly to make certain that what he saw first on paper, we now see in granite. Believe me, Steve went above and beyond what many people could do to get this memorial final, dedicated to those who gave the ultimate sacrifice. I am grateful. We should be grateful for all of Steve's efforts. Steve.
Thank you, Jerry. That's rather embarrassing, though. We had a good committee that I've had the honor of working with since 1999. It's nearly 20 years now that we started the work on the World War I and II Memorial Committee. But first of all, I want to welcome all of you and thank you for attending this dedication and showing your support for our veterans and our active military personnel. I think it means a lot to our veterans and military personnel when we have ceremonies like this, and on Veterans Day coming up next month, and Memorial Day, to have the public come out to show their thanks. And that's what this memorial is all about, as well as honoring all of our military veterans, active service members and their family. We salute your sacrifice and your service, and that is what this memorial seeks to honor and represent. I'd like to welcome all of our special guests, and please be seated. Please be seated. I'll try to be brief. I want to welcome all of our public officials, and I apologize, there's too many to mention. I don't want to leave anyone out, but many of them will be speaking here, and so you'll know who they are, as well as many of them will be part of this wreath-laying ceremony in a few moments. As I mentioned, this memorial represents the completion of the work that was begun in 1999 with the Peoria County World War I and II Veterans Memorial Committee, and then later with this project, simply the Peoria County Veterans Memorial Committee. Both committees were charged with the duties of raising the necessary funds, planning and selecting a concept design, and construct a fitting memorial to honor all veterans from Peoria County, especially those who never returned. One of the threads that runs through all of these memorials on the Courthouse Plaza, even though they are a different design, is that this committee, and obviously the committee way back in 1899 at the dedication of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, was to include all of the names of the honored fallen. And that was something the committee wanted to keep and maintain, and I think it's very fitting and extremely important. The memorials that honor service members from World War II to the present, and of course, sadly, but into the future, as other conflicts and other wars may require that we add more names. That's why you'll see the blank panels here on this memorial. Bruce Stephen will be talking in a little more detail about the design of the memorial in a few minutes, but we're not 100% complete. We'll be adding a new statue next spring, and Bruce will tell you a little bit about that in a few minutes. The Memorial Committee was charged with constructing a fitting memorial to honor our veterans. And we hope that you concur that our committee has successfully completed that charge. I'd like, if I may, just to quickly read through the names of the committee members. We thank our honorary members that are here today, the Honorable Darren LaHood and the Honorable Sherry Bustos, our United States representatives in the Peoria area, the Honorable Jerry Brady, our state's attorney, for giving us advice and guidance, Bruce Tiemann, our vice chairman, Kenneth C. Baker, Dr. Peter J. Corey, Ernie M. Crowell, and of course our keynote speaker, Lieutenant Colonel Hal Fritz, J. Ryan Hubbard, Sheriff Michael McCoy, County Board Member Phil Salzer, Councilman Eric Turner, and retired County Auditor Carol Van Winkle. I thank them humbly for all of their work for these many years. We started this particular project in 2012, and I can't thank them enough. I also want to thank Sheriff Brian Asbell and the Peoria County Sheriff's Honor Guard for helping us with traffic control, as well as presenting the colors. Rick Kowalski and Dan McConnell with the Peoria County Facilities Department, the Peoria Police Department, and Peoria County Administration, Scott Sorrell and Gresham Purcell, for helping us put this program together, because I cannot do it all myself, believe me. I would make a lot of mistakes if I tried. So, also, in closing, I want to thank some folks that really stepped forward to help us. It takes a lot of money to construct memorials like this, memorials that'll last for generations to come. And we had a lot of help, and a lot of people stepped forward. First of all, I know Doug Dillow is here, and he took some time out. He's got a lot going on out of Wildlife Prairie Park this weekend, but Wildlife Prairie Park donated the statue you see of the U.S. soldier from the Vietnam War era and his dog. I'd like to thank former County Board Chairman Tom O'Neill for agreeing and authorizing the establishment of this committee, and current Chairman Andrew Rand for his tireless and everlasting support, along with the County Board and their support of this project. I'd like to particularly thank the Peoria City Council and Mayor Artis. They have been a big supporter of this project, and we just could not have done it without the partnership between Peoria County and the City of Peoria. I'd like to thank Caterpillar Tractor Company, Medina Township, Brewers Distributing. Paul Jacobs' loss was a great blow to our community. I don't know that he ever said no to a good cause, and he was very, very supportive of this project, and his loss is very sad to us and this entire community. St. Francis Medical Center, SEPCU, John Beers, Greg Gephardt at Schooners, and Peoria Township. I'd like to thank them all for their support, because we couldn't have done it without them. And I'd also like to thank Deborah Henderson, who will be laying a wreath in a few minutes, and Bruce Tiemann. They spent countless hours researching the names that are on this memorial. We did not want to leave anyone out, and I appreciate all the hours they put into this project. So thank you, and I hope the veterans and our community agrees that this is a fitting tribute to our service people. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Steve. I just have a couple of comments before we move forward. As a young boy, I often wondered, after World War II, it seemed that those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, they never came home. A lot of things they never did. They never married, most. They never had children, most. They never saw a toddler open a Christmas present. Never saw a child graduate high school or college. Many never attended any high school graduations, college graduations. Had an opportunity to dance with their daughter at a wedding, or celebrate the holidays, or celebrate Father's Day, or attend any special family gathering. And we should never forget them. At this time, I'd like to introduce my good friend Larry Evans. Larry Evans serves in the Peoria County State's Attorney's Office, Chief of the Civil Division, and has, to our great fortune, served in several wars that we honor today. Larry M. Evans is an Assistant State's Attorney in Peoria County. He served as a helicopter pilot throughout his Army career, flying combat tours in Vietnam, Bosnia, Iraq. He retired from the United States Army after 38 years of service as a Chief Warrant Officer, CW4. Mr. Evans enlisted in the United States Army in 1970 and subsequently received his Army Aviator wings from the U.S. Army Flight School at Fort Rucker, Alabama. As a helicopter pilot following his commissioning as a warrant officer in November 1971, he attended combat medical training for pilots at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, en route to Vietnam. He served 13 and a half months in Vietnam from 1972 to 1973 as a medevac helicopter pilot, referred to as a dust-off, picking up critically wounded soldiers, Vietnam allies, from hostile areas and transporting them to the nearest life-saving medical facility. Following his Vietnam service, he returned home and transferred thereafter to the U.S. Army Reserve, performing various flying duties as a pilot command from 75 to 03, multiple types, and flying rotary wing aircraft. In 2005, Mr. Evans transferred to the Army Reserve, to the Illinois Army National Guard, serving from 03 to 08. During his Reserve National Guard service, he was mobilized by the U.S. Army to support the United Nations in Bosnia from 1999 to 2000, where he was flying an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter with the famous 6th Battalion, 229th Aviation Regiment Flying Tigers throughout Bosnia, Kosovo, Serbia. Mr. Evans was most recently mobilized for service to Iraq, where he performed combat missions flying UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters from December of 2003 until March of 2005 with the 6th Battalion, 229th Aviation Regiment, which is located at Peoria Airport. Some of his awards include Master Aviator Wings, Combat Action Badge, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star, Meritorious Service, just to name a few. At this time, please welcome my friend and hero, Larry Evans.
Morning. As Jerry just told you, in 1970, I had decided I was going to join the Army. I was at the time a junior at the University of Illinois in Champaign, studying engineering. But at the time, because of everything that was going on at the time, I thought I wanted to enlist in the service. So I went down to an Army recruiter. I knew I didn't want to go into the infantry because those that served in the infantry were the ones that were on the ground, and I didn't really like the idea of having to be on the ground all the time. So when I talked to the recruiter, I asked what I could do, what was available, and he said that, oh, we have a helicopter pilot school that if you test into, you can go to flight school. Well, that sounded real good to me, so I applied and I was accepted into the Army as a candidate. I went through flight school, as Mr. Brady told you, and I finished flight school at Fort Rucker, went to combat training for aviators at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, and that was en route to Vietnam. in Vietnam, as Mr. Gray told you, I served flying medevac, which was picking up wounded soldiers that were injured and killed. We would try to keep them alive, bring them to the closest MASH or evacuation hospital, and we were quite successful. The United States Medical Service, they did outstanding duty in Vietnam, and we were able to contribute in a small way to saving a number of service members. Following that tour in Vietnam, I came back. When my tour was up, I got out of the Army, went into the reserve component, finished school, and I stayed in the reserves for a number of years till I retired 38 years later. I was fortunate to fly every helicopter that the United States Army had, with the exception of the Chinook. The Chinook is a transport helicopter, and it wasn't something that I really wanted to fly. So I was fortunate to fly the Apache attack helicopter. I served in Bosnia, flying in Croatia, Kosovo, Serbia, flying that aircraft. I came back after that, subsequently transferred into the National Guard here in Peoria. Once I started working for Kevin Lyons as the state's attorney's office, as an assistant state's attorney then, and approximately 2 years later, my unit, which was out at Peoria, where it still is, was mobilized. And I'm sure a number of those in the audience had friends or relatives that have served in either the Air Guard or the Army Guard out at the Peoria Airport. We were mobilized in December of 2003 and went to Iraq. I was flying the UH-60, which was the transport helicopter, and I was there until March of 2005. As I've looked back on my career, I've been very fortunate, and I've seen throughout the 40-year term almost the change in our military. And with regards to aviation, it's been quite a sophisticated change from the days of flying in Vietnam, looking at maps, to flying in Iraq and Bosnia, where our aircraft was guided by satellites hundreds of miles in the air, and we're able to be guided by our in-cockpit equipment to an area less than 4 yards from any point in the world. And it's a testament again to the skill of our military and our country as a whole. But all of that sophistication and all of that high-tech equipment, which is the best in the world, wouldn't mean anything without the people that are flying, and more importantly, the people that are on the ground fighting for our country. Because all of the sophisticated scientific equipment can't take the place of a single U.S. soldier that's on the ground, on a ship, somewhere in a theater, mobilized, fighting for the United States, contributing to the United States. And that's what is great about our country, is the fact that there are people that have historically, when the time came, have gone into the military. And it isn't a recent phenomenon. It's something that has occurred for all of our country's history. There's always been men and women that have been willing to sacrifice for whatever reason. And I certainly didn't go into the Army in 1970 with any noble ideas. I don't know anybody who did, to be honest with you. But for whatever the reasons a person does, and whatever the reasons these people whose name are engraved on these memorial stones, whatever their reasons, there's something that they learned, like I learned, once I served my country. And it came to me, surprisingly, in Iraq. It was a nighttime. I had a nighttime mission. I had to refuel my aircraft. So I had about 20 minutes. I was standing out in the desert near Balad Airfield at a refueling point, and we had a mission to go up to the border with Iran that night. And I was alone. It was a beautiful night. It had cooled down. It was, I think, about 90 degrees, which we took as a cool down in Iraq. And I thought to myself, what a huge undertaking that I was a part of. What a large, powerful army that had moved all of us to the other side of the world, a hostile terrain, heat that is hard to even describe, in an area where nobody wants us there, contrary to reports. And all of the United States service members of all the branches were there thousands and thousands of miles away, fully supported, equipment, fuel, ammunition, aircraft, food, you name it, our country, because of its power, stature, and people that made that possible. It made me realize that I was a tiny part of something that was just so powerful to behold. And I've talked with friends of mine, others that served, be they recently or Vietnam or Korean or even World War II. And surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, I should say, they all felt the same thing. There came a time when they realized that we were part of something bigger, that we were part of something that called for a sacrifice, and we were honored to be able to participate. And I know one of the names of the pilot that's on this memorial. I don't know the others, but I will bet that they all had that same sense of pride. They all felt the same way, honored to be part of their sacrifice. This memorial, it's a point of focus for the community, for the members of the families whose names, their loved ones, are inscribed in the stone. That's what a memorial is, and that's what this memorial is. It's a place for people to come. It's a place for family to come. It's a place for veterans to come, to think about the times they were in the military. It's a place for non-veterans, people to come, to reflect on those that did sacrifice, those that sacrificed ultimately by giving their life. That's what memorials are. Long after we're gone, every one of us here this morning, long after we're all gone, this will hopefully still be here. And it'll be a place where people can come and reflect and remember. Because that's why the work was done. That's why the contributions were made. That's why everyone that participated in bringing us all here today, that's why they did what they did. To build a place for all to come remember. That's what a memorial is. In closing, I'd just like to read a part of a poem that was written by Lawrence Binion in 1914, at the beginning of what was to become the Great War. In those days, in the early months of 1914, when the English were fighting in Belgium, they were losing at certain times 1,000 soldiers an hour. Over the course of the first 6 months, thousands of soldiers on both sides, French, German, Belgium, and English, died. He wrote a poem called For the Fallen. And part of it is referred to as the Ode of Remembrance. And he wrote, they shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember those whose names are on this memorial. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I also want to pay thanks to Jessie, Larry's daughter, who traveled here from the Chicago area to hear him speak. And as I stood here and I looked down, I noticed, as I'd known before and I knew I would see it, Larry still spit shines his shoes. You know, this morning when I got here, I got to one end of the courthouse and I looked this way, and I suppose it's my age, I can't see to the other end of the courthouse. But I know if I went to that end of the courthouse and I looked this way, I still wouldn't see the other end of the courthouse. But this memorial, whether we start at that end or we start at that end, is largely attributable to all the efforts, the initiative, the ideas of Bruce Tiemann. Bruce, also a U.S. Army Vietnam veteran, helicopter door gunner, was involved in all the detail, all the concept of putting this together. And what a wonderful job he did. At this time I'd like to introduce Bruce Tiemann. Bruce.
Jerry. Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, Peoria. Thank you for your attendance and your patience. I'm the third and the last attorney, practicing attorney, that you're going to hear this morning. So look out at the end of the month. There'll probably be a bill in your mail. Well, it's a very good morning, and it's good to see so many friends, fellow Peorians, fellow veterans. It's a happy day. It's a proud day, and it carries on a tradition that Peoria started in 1866 to honor the young men and the young women from this community who willingly or not so willingly interrupted their young lives for a few years to take the oath of service, get their heads shaved, get woke up in the dark hours of the early morning by a drill instructor yelling in their face, and go off for the adventure of their lives, to serve their country, to join the ranks and do the hard, dangerous, but essential and continuing work. They advanced and they protected freedom around the world. We gather here for the fourth time in our county, in our city, in our community's history. The first Civil War memorial was erected in October of 1866. And those who erected it had the same idea we have today. They wanted a tangible, physical reminder of the sacrifice and the service of the young men from this community that fought the Great War, the Civil War. The second gathering was in 1899 for a second Civil War memorial. This memorial to my right that they built is so grand, it's so impressive, it can't be equaled. And for many decades, no one wanted to even build another memorial on the courthouse square. It cast a big shadow. But in 1999, some of us veterans and many of the community leaders that are here thought, why shouldn't the World War I veterans, why shouldn't the World War II veterans have some recognition, have some public recognition? So we got together, and with great support from the community, a generous, patriotic community, 8 years later, this fine World War I and II memorial to my left was dedicated in 2007 by General Wayne Downing. He stood without an umbrella on a May day in a pouring rain, water dripping off of him, and he said, "I was infantry. Many of you were infantry. Infantry doesn't have umbrellas." So I promised everyone who agreed to come down here today that there'd be no rain, and I also promised there'd be no Viet Cong. So whether you were infantry like General Downing or you were in the air cab like me, you don't need an umbrella today. Your umbrella would blow away. And if you see any Viet Cong, tell Hal Fritz. Hal Fritz knows how to handle them. He handled them once and he can do it again. Yes, that's right. Hal's fearless exploits are memorialized on this memorial forever. So after the World War I and II memorial was dedicated, we thought there was still more work to be done, and then our 10-year effort began to create this memorial. Our concept was to fill the historical gap of covering service since World War II and to fill the physical gap of this section of the courthouse square between these other two memorials. So we could have a memorial row, we could have a memorial block. The honor flight goes out to D.C., but we have an honor block here right now. This third and final memorial for all the veterans after World War II leaves room for the future, conflicts that will continue. And with the help of the county board, the city of Peoria, the generous Peorians, people who reached into their billfolds and donated the money, and it took several hundreds of thousands of dollars in public donations to build this. Jim Ash, a well-respected landscape architect, provided the design concept you see today. He didn't listen to me. My design concept was to land a Huey helicopter right here and just tie it down. I think Larry could have done that for us. That idea got shot down. Thought I'd get a bigger laugh out of that. Our committee also wanted some soldier statues, so the one closest is a Korean War statue of a soldier sculpted by Preston Jackson. I hope Preston's here today. Preston, if you're here today, stand up. Yes, yeah, here's Preston. This statue is so lifelike. When you stand next to it, you'll think you're talking to a living person. And those from the Korean War, like Pete Williams here today, and I know there's more Korean War veterans than Pete, when they look at that, they'll see the uniform, they'll see the rifle. This statue is authentic. The next statue is a soldier from the Vietnam War with a war dog. I recognize the M16 that he's carrying. I was issued one in 1969. I found it was better to trade it in for an M60. The third statue is underway, and it'll be a modern era soldier from the wars in Iraq, the Gulf, Afghanistan, the war on terrorism. It'll be a female pilot. Women served in large numbers with great distinction in those conflicts and achieved many historic military first. The tough battles in the Middle East go on with their help to preserve and to advance freedom. The names on these memorials include fathers, brothers, ourselves, our children, everyone that served and wore the uniform from 1946 to the present. We're doing a good thing for them and for us. And I'm privileged, very privileged, to take part in these memorials. And when veterans and their families come to this memorial and see the names of their fallen comrades and read the information about the conflicts that their family members served in, they'll feel, we hope, a great sense of pride and accomplishment. Their efforts have improved the world we live in. It's right and it's fitting that our community shows this respect and gratitude. That's the concept of this memorial. We collected a little biographical information on every veteran whose name is engraved on this memorial and the World War I and II memorial, thanks to Dave Henderson's help. All those who died in service, from battle, from disease, from accident, or from every other cause, and those whose bodies have never been recovered and are still in Vietnam and still in Korea. They're all here now, and you'll hear their names read later in this program. There are only two I want to mention because they are the oldest and the youngest names on the wall. Tony Pendola was the youngest person whose name is on this wall. Tony lost his life when he was 17 in Vietnam. Tony was a 65 graduate of Woodruff. When he went to Vietnam, he was already married with a daughter, Tammy, and Tammy's here in the audience today. Tony was quickly thrown into the fiercest battle in the whole war. It was called the Battle of the Ai Drang Valley. That battle was so fierce it was made into a book and then made into a movie. It starred Mel Gibson. It was called We Were Soldiers Once and Young. Tony was a soldier once, and he was certainly young. And after he lost his life in that battle, no more 17-year-olds were sent to Vietnam. He was the last of the 11 who had died in battle at that point. Lieutenant Colonel Carl McCormick is the oldest name on this wall. He was born in Peoria in 1928. In 1928, he graduated from Manual High School in 1946. He served in World War II. He served in Korea. He was still serving and still flying. He was a pilot in October of 1972 when he lost his life in the skies above Da Nang, South Vietnam. His body was never recovered. He was answering the call of duty at the age of 44. I was in the service, and I know if you're a colonel and you're 44 years old, you don't have to fly in combat. But he did. He was a fine man from Peoria, and he was staying to finish the job. So today, I am so grateful that you have stayed with me to finish this job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. At this time, I'd like to introduce Representative Darren LaHood for a few brief comments.
Well, what a great day for Peoria County, and what a great day for our veterans here today. Yeah, all right. I want to just acknowledge all of the veterans in the crowd here today for your sacrifice and your commitment to our great country. And it's a pleasure to be here today with my colleague in Congress, Congresswoman Sherry Bustos, but to honor our veterans. And, you know, I also want to give my strong thanks to Steve Sonamaker, to Bruce Tiemann, and to David Henderson, who every day for the last 10 years woke up and said, how do we get another check? How do we get more resources? How do we build this memorial? And so give them another round of applause for everything they've done to make this happen here today. We live in the greatest country in the world, and we tend to forget that sometimes, but it's the greatest country in the world because of our veterans and the men and women that sacrificed to make this the greatest country in the world. And we have the freedoms and the comforts that we have because of the men and women that sacrificed for this country, and we honor them with this beautiful memorial here today. And it is a testament to them. And if you haven't been up here yet and you read this wall and you look at the conflicts that we have forgotten about, from Panama to Grenada to the Persian Gulf to Somalia to Bosnia to Afghanistan to Iraq, and you think about that sacrifice that those men and women did for our great country. And so to be here today, to honor them, to have this permanent memorial here in Peoria means so much. And I know we have some young people here, but this is about the future too, for our kids and our grandkids. And I brought one of my sons here today so that when we're gone, they'll walk by here and be able to read this and know about the sacrifice of what people here in Peoria County did for this great nation. And so this is titled A Final Salute. This is a salute to our veterans. It's a salute to them forever for their sacrifice for what they did for this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative LaHood. This time, I'd like to present Sherry Bustos, Representative.
Thanks, Jerry. You didn't say brief for me. You said brief for Darren. Just kidding. I'll make sure that I'm brief as well. It is good to be with all of you. Thank you so much to the community of Peoria. I think we've had some wonderful tributes so far, talking about the names of those who have perished, who's right in front of you. The fact that we can fly the American flag here, that Abraham Lincoln is looking down on us, that we have firefighters here, the police officers, and so many veterans. What I want to do is recognize this community and the communities all around us that make something like this possible. The individuals who took the leadership have come up before you and spoken already. I want to tell you one quick story that I think exemplifies the kind of communities that we come from. Something that Darren LaHood and I are able to do as members of Congress is we can rename federal buildings in some cases. And in my time in Congress, we've passed legislation to rename 3 post offices. One of them is just about 30 miles from here in Fairview, Illinois, which is part of the southern part of the congressional district that I serve. And we renamed that just this summer after Sergeant Douglas J. Riney, who was killed yes, you know what, thank you. Absolutely. Let's recognize Sergeant Douglas J. Riney. He served in the Army, was killed in the Middle East, and we thought it was very fitting to rename the Fairview Post Office the Sergeant Douglas J. Riney Post Office. But what I want to share with you is the story of that day when we had the ceremony, the dedication ceremony to rename that. Fairview, Illinois is just 533 people. It's only 533 people. And before we went down to have the dedication ceremony, the volunteer fire department repainted all of the fire hydrants along the main street. Everybody who lived along the main street mowed their grass for the day. The library that was located just across the street from the post office, the library director literally got down on her hands and knees and scrubbed the bathroom floor to make sure it was nice and clean for anybody who had to use the facilities. The VFW and the American Legion all showed up carrying flags. In fact, flags were placed in all of the front yards all along the main street. Cookies were made by some of the women there to make sure that we could pass out cookies. And to top it all off, we didn't have power to give our speeches. So the next door neighbor got a giant extension cord and ran that to the speaker so we could be heard when we spoke. And then more than half of the community of 533 people showed up for this ceremony because the local cafe, the only cafe in town, also closed down, so people would go to the ceremony instead of go out to eat. And I share that brief story with you. Hopefully that was brief, Jerry. But I share that brief story with you to show you the kind of communities that can make something like this happen. And I couldn't be prouder than to be able to be your representative in the U.S. House of Representatives, and to see so many people show up today on this little bit of a chilly day, and to make this happen and to recognize those who have perished before us, again, that allow us to fly the American flag, that give us the freedom that we can experience for our generation, for the future generations. So God bless you all, and God bless America.
Thank you, Sherry. You know, the few meetings that I was able to attend, the name Jim Artis was always mentioned as being a supporter of this in any way possible. Whether it was raising money or the support for the erection, it was always Jim Artis behind it. And so I'm honored to introduce my friend Jim Artis.
Thank you, Jerry. On behalf of the city council members that are present here today, I would also like to pay our respects to all the veterans who are with us today, all of those who gave the ultimate sacrifice that are recognized in all these memorials, and we're very humbled to be here and play a small part in the presentations today. I'd also like to ask everybody, maybe if you have a chance today, in addition to the monuments that we're recognizing here today, one of our local historians, Norm Kelly, who is also with us today, has done a lot of research on a lot of the veterans that have served, particularly from our area. And Norm was able to do research and find out about a local Peorian by the name of George H. Ellis, who was born and raised here, right here in Peoria. And Mr. Ellis was killed in battle aboard the USS Brooklyn in the war against Spain in 1898. And he was the only person to lose his life in that battle. And Norm did the research, found out about this Peorian, and we were able to get the information and place it on a plaque over here in the plaza. So if you have an opportunity to visit that plaque and maybe learn a little bit more about another Peorian who served, and later the Navy named a ship after him, which is the USS Ellis, which served during many battles during World War II and beyond. So to Norm, thank you very much for the research that you did on this particular person from Peoria. I hope you all have a chance to take a look at that plaque over there. And again, to all of our veterans, God bless you and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And as we all know, without the help of Peoria County, this would not have happened. And so I'm honored to introduce Chairman of the Peoria County Board, Andrew Rand.
Thank you, everyone, and good morning. It would be time to stand up and stretch just a minute. We're getting ready. I know everyone's cold, and I am so glad to be standing. The County of Peoria is humbled today by everyone's presence, and in particular the work of Steve Sonnemaker and his committee, who for more than a decade have been working to complete this plaza. And it's great ideas like this that when finally we see them in the 3D result, that was the idea of architects and visionaries, it's very, very inspiring. But we're here today because we're not only commemorating the dedication of this fine memorial, but to recognize that while some think it's cliche, freedom indeed is not free. And just a week ago, we put the big picture of Mr. Lincoln up on the side of our courthouse too. Our country is going through many, many iterations of what it means to be safe and to have ideals of our Constitution preserved, and they are only preserved by the strength and power of our country's willingness to defend all the liberties we enjoy at any price. And that sometimes is with treasure, and sometimes is with blood. And it just, as I sit with two congressmen, one from the 17th and one from the 18th district, I think that's a blessing we have two here. I'm just reminded of how important your work is every day, helping keep all of us safe, and I want to thank you both for that. It's a tough job, you know it. We're very proud and honored to have you both here today. My final comment would be, please remember, my dad served in Korea, and I've been thinking about him a lot and planning on coming down here this morning, and everyone here is for a reason. And that reason might also be that we reach out and touch our veterans. The county 2 years ago doubled its financial support for the Veterans Administration so that we could continue to fight for the benefits our veterans in Central Illinois deserve. And I'm very proud of the county board for having made that decision. Veterans count, their families count, and we should do everything to respect, reward, and honor them. And I want to thank you for being here today. And Jerry, you've been a fine MC, but I really want to give you a coach. I'm very, very worried about you standing there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll get the code in a minute, as soon as I finish. I'm really, we use the words and sometimes they become cliches. Humbled and honored, but we really are. If we think about Al Fritz and what he accomplished for all of us, each and every one of us, the sacrifice. Mr. Harold A. Fritz was born February 21, 1944 in Chicago. He entered the United States Army in 1966 and was commissioned as an armor second lieutenant through the Officer Candidate School, Fort Knox, Kentucky in March 1966. His 27-year service career included combat service in Vietnam, peacetime service in the U.S., Germany, and Korea. His individual military combat peacetime awards include the Medal of Honor, Silver Star, Bronze Star with Oak Leaf Cluster and V device, Purple Heart with Oak Leaf Cluster, Legion of Merit, Defense Meritorious Service Medal with 2 Oak Leaf Clusters, the Army Commendation Medal with Oak Leaf Cluster. He's also the recipient of the Outstanding Civilian Service Medal for his service as a civilian aide to nonetheless Secretary of the Army. He's a life member of the following veterans organizations: the Congressional Medal of Honor Society, in which he served as Vice President and President, Military Order of the Purple Heart, United States, Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, Veterans of Foreign War, American Veterans, Korean War Veteran Association, Vietnam, and the Black Horse, 1st Armored Cavalry Regiment Association. He is also an honorary member of the 173rd Airborne Association. Mr. Fritz held the position of civilian aide to the Secretary of Army for the Illinois South from 1998 until August of 2003. Mr. Fritz retired in the rank of Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Army in June of 1993. He worked as a counselor for the Illinois Veterans Leadership Program from July 1993 to April 1995. He served as Deputy Director, Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs from May 1995 to May 2003. Mr. Fritz worked for the Federal Department of Veterans Affairs at the Peoria VA outpatient clinic from September 2004 to February 2003. And his wife Mary have a daughter and 3 sons. Kim, a child care provider, Christopher, an engineer with Caterpillar. United States Army Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey is currently serving with the Pacific Command in Hawaii, and Michael is an attorney with the Peoria law firm of Paul, Rustin, and Fritz. Harold and Mary are proud grandparents, 10 grandchildren. And as we all know, in honor and respect is the recipient of the Medal of Honor. And we honor him and all he did. And at this time I would again ask that we all stand. and honor Medal of Honor winner, Alfred. Colonel.
Thank you very much. That's a fantastic introduction. Jerry mentioned my son Jeff is in the United States Army as Lieutenant Colonel. I retired as a Lieutenant Colonel, and I reminded my son Jeffrey that if he made full bowl, 06, full colonel, and retired, I would only refer to him as Jeff, not sir. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for us as veterans and as Americans to be here for this memorial dedication, and especially if you look at the three memorials as they're in front of the courthouse. I think that's particularly important because what to me it represents is the freedom that we fought for, the sacrifice that our forefathers made was to promote freedom and justice for all that they receive at the courthouse behind these memorials. And I think that's fitting that we have three memorials here in Peoria, and one representing the women that fought so bravely, continue to fight so bravely for the United States and freedom. And it is probably one of the few memorials in the United States that represents Vietnam, Korea, and the War on Terror with individuals that are Caucasian, African American, and female. I worked with Preston Jackson on the Korean statue, and we had many sessions where we sat down and talked about the war. And this was Preston's first military statue. And we talked about the fragility of freedom, the sacrifice that men and women must make. And when you look upon the faces of these statues, and look on the faces of the men and women they represent, you see the serious nature of combat, and commitment, dedication, and sacrifice. It's important that we recognize the efforts that went into these memorials and why, as was mentioned before, we have the memorials. Not to memorialize war as such, but to show America and future generations the sacrifice it takes to maintain this freedom. President Abraham Lincoln once said, "Any nation that does not honor its heroes will not long endure." This memorial, the final salute, recognizes that need to project, protect, and preserve, and with deep reverence, explain and exclaim the importance of service and sacrifice of our men and women that have served and are serving as members of the United States Armed Forces during periods of both conflict and peace. They were in the past and remain in the present as dedicated members of the United States Armed Forces, acting as our gatekeepers of the entrance of freedom and a free society, a formidable force of deterrence, enunciated also as a fierce force of warriors, ready when necessary to engage those armies that wish to wrestle away the freedoms of a free nation. Unfortunately, war, in all its ugliness, expresses a non-discriminatory ability to disallow some of those brave patriots the ability to safely return to their families and homeland as a result of those brave warriors becoming the casualties of armed conflict. I wish to express my most heartfelt sympathy to those Gold Star families that are here today for the loss of their loved ones, the sacrifices of their loved patriot and family member leaves a hole in the hearts of a family that cannot be easily mended or forgotten. We, the 74 living Medal of Honor recipients representing World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the War on Terror, wear our blue ribbons and medals of honor, not to represent us as individuals, but rather to represent the courage, dedication, and sacrifice of all men and women that have served and are serving in the armed forces of the United States of America, inclusive of those brave servicemen and women that have paid the ultimate price, have made the ultimate sacrifice. We, as Medal of Honor recipients, are merely the messengers and temporary guardians of these medals of honor that represent blood shed in the name of freedom. We accept this mantle of responsibility both proudly and most humbly, as each of us recipients are acutely aware of the importance of our roles in representing America's sons and daughters, America's warriors, spanning many years and many armed conflicts. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the nation's warriors who came from all walks of life and from every corner of this great land of ours. They were and are our grandfathers, grandmothers, fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, sons and daughters, grandsons and granddaughters, close friends, and our neighbors. They are all ordinary people living ordinary lives who were asked to make extraordinary sacrifices in extraordinary times for their country. They answered a call to arms not because they loved war, for nothing is more repulsive to the character of a free people than war for the war's sake. These proud young American patriots answered their country's call for a higher purpose, to preserve liberty, justice, equality, and the right to live in a free world from tyranny and injustice. Lest we forget, over 102,000 American men and women lost their lives in the conflicts of Korea, Vietnam, and the War on Terror. This is the cost of protecting, and preserving freedom. These were America's sons and daughters. Let us not arbitrarily consider the tremendous cost of life when we consider commitment of the United States Armed Forces members. Every decision, including those at the highest levels to deploy United States Armed Forces, must carefully be deliberated prior to getting the thumbs up signal. The weight of this decision is one that involved decision makers must carry for the remainder of their lives. John F. Kennedy once said, "A nation reveals itself not only by the men and women it produces, but also by the men and women it honors, the men and women it remembers." Let us not, as Republicans, Democrats, blacks, Hispanics, Indians, or other political, ethnic, or religious affiliated groups, stand alone on this issue. We, as a nation united, together must stand proudly, putting aside our differences, and never forget the sacrifices of those that have served and are serving, to include those veterans and active duty service members standing amongst us, as well as those that have fallen in the line of duty. Let us constantly be reminded of the importance and the extreme fragility of the very precious commodity we call freedom, and the very high price we must pay to maintain it. Thank you and best wishes to each and every one of you. To the veterans and active duty service members present, thank you for your service, dedication, and sacrifice. To the families of the veterans, thank you for your everlasting support of your American patriot and hero. To our Gold Star families, may the sacrifices of your departed loved ones never be forgotten. And to our fallen comrades in arms, brothers and sisters, we salute you for your ultimate sacrifice and your gift of freedom to us. May God bless America and keep our troopers safe as they proudly serve throughout the world in the name of freedom and equality for all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. You're truly a humble man. I have heard you on the radio. I've heard you speak, and you never recount the battle that you were awarded, the Medal of Honor. I've only read about your heroism, and you've never publicly spoken about it. You are truly a humble man, warrior, and our hero. And thank you today. Thank you for what you did. This time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Gabe McClade for the offering of the wreaths.
Thank you, Jerry. The Korean War. As I recite the honor names of those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the Korean War, the Korean War veteran Mr. Alan Hartgrader will be presenting a wreath in their honor. Mr. Hartgrader will be escorted by State Senator Chuck Weaver and Peoria County Board Member Kate Laskusha. Jackie D. Allen, James V. Anderson, David L. Ayers, Raymond A. Behrens, Turner F. Blackwell, Herman E. Bond, Robert O. Bristol, Charles R. Brown, Marvin R. Brooks, Bernard J. Birch, Arthur Childers, Lewis N. Cox, Richard E. Crotty, Norby R. Davis, Gerald F. Day, Herschel E. Denner, Edward J. Denner, Philip R. Denner, William J. Dobbins, Leo F. Dudley, Lloyd M. Eads, Jr., Charles W. Ensley, Richard D. Espinoza, Philip J. Evans, Wendell H. Evans, Roger M. Feldman, Jackie L. Fisher, Donald D. Fizzler, John H. Franklin, Donald B. Franks, Charles D. Gardner, James W. Graham, Raleigh B. Groom, John Gross, Michael C. Grubisky, Ronald Kane, John R. Haynes, William D. Harker, Walter R. Harless, Leonard G. Harsey Jr., William A. Hill, Dan L. Hare, Kenneth R. Jackson, James C. Jenkel, Ronald L. Johns, Darnold L. Kiefer, Jonathan Kersey, James A. Kitchell, Harry E. Knickerbocker Jr., William B. Call, Gerald G. LaHood, Robert M. Lauer, Leonard G. Lee, Paul J. Lung, Peter Manuel, Leo A. Martin, Cecil G. Matthews, Corliss R. McKinney, Frank V. Meek, Gilbert Metzger, Mark W. Moody, Melvin M. Miller, Andrew J. Morgan Jr., Robert G. Meyer, Ellis E. Myers, Donald Northrup, Garner All Nollmeyer, Paul O. Parkhurst, Harold W. Parliar, Thomas R. Pemple, Dwayne M. Phillips, Sherman M. Phillips, Sherman J. Pike, John E. Purple, James A. Reed, Pascal Riggio, David L. Rodden, Haldine Ross, Richard D. Schmeidecker, Charles Schultz, Albert J. Sagetti, Albert A. Self, Andrew E. Shane, Donald E. Shaver, Herbert A. Snyder, Merle L. Strongs, Gene A. Standiford, Jesse R. Stanton, Albert L. Swearinger, Glenn L. Tankman, Jack R. Thornton, Roland G. Davis, William E. Vaughn, Charles Williams, Elwood C. White, Joseph E. Eagle, and Bernard L. Zimmerman. The Vietnam War. As I recite the honor names of those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the Vietnam War veteran Mr. David Henderson will be presenting a wreath in their honor. Mr. Henderson will be escorted by Peoria County Board members Bob Beato and Phil Salzer. Paul D. Albritton, Harold J. Alwyn, Michael K. Anderson, Johnny R. Arnold, Russell C. Arnold, Martin W. Ayers, Ronald L. Ballou, John E. Bannister, Ernest L. Barber, Charles W. Barden, Troy C. Battles, Richard J. Burns, Bruce J. Bell, John H. Bell, Richard W. Bethel, Scott L. Burkett, Charles D. Black, Gary P. Bland, Patrick J. Bohan, Robert E. Boyle, Kenneth R. Brinker, Terrence L. Brown, Robert L. Butler, Frederick T. Chalmers, Robert L. Chandler, Irving S. Chenoweth III, Earl Thomas Klassen, Joseph R. Clinch, Charles E. Kaufman, Kerry Copeland, William A. DeBates, Merle A. Dentino, Donald G. Detmeyer, Barry V. Duffer, James R. DeSert, Marion T. Eakins, Richard D. Eckerd, William C. Eckerd, Daniel F. Farrell, Thomas F. Gagnon, Frederick W. Harms Jr., Jesse E. Harris, Brian T. Heber, John K. Hester, Kirk E. Howe, Merle W. Howell, Jerry J. Johnson, Terry L. Johnston, Terry R. Johnston, Benjamin Jowers Jr., Frederick M. Kaiser Jr., Joseph M. Coos, Robert J. Coutless, Robert D. Lauer, Curtis Lauer, Virgil M. Lindquist, Donald G. Lukens, Homer M. Lynn Jr., Carl O. McCormick, Robert Y. Miller, Morgan T. Moran, Harold E. Knoll, Fernando E. Ordaz, Anthony E. Pendola, Edward Perry, Ted B. Peterson, Peter Piper, James D. Porter, Rex M. Ron, Larry R. Rutherford, Philip P. Reed, Kirk I. Riley, Ronald J. Riley, Robert E. Ringenberger, William Shear, James B. Shelby, Richard L. Shyrock, Roger W. Sipp, Lyle L. Slane, Walter L. Smiles, Robert M. Smith, Daniel J. Sabota, James R. Saudi, David J. Speck, Michael L. Stacy, David S. Stewart, Michael D. Stotler, Robert Strickler, Ricky L. Teben, Charles E. Thomas, Matthias W. Toft, James S. Van Soyak, Menard T. Wade, David M. Wagner, Paul E. Walbeezer Jr., William S. Walsh, Richard L. Ward, Wayne A. Washburn, Gary E. Watkins, Larry F. White, Donald R. Wilbur, Gary V. Woosley, Joseph M. Workman, Wallace E. Wright, and Ronald L. Zine. The War on Terrorism. As I recite the honored names of those who made the ultimate sacrifice during the ongoing War on Terrorism, Gulf Era veteran Mr. Rod Howitt will be presented a wreath in their honor. Mr. Howitt will be escorted by Peoria City Councilman Sid Regal, Peoria Township Supervisor Frank Abnauer, and State Representative Ryan Spain. Christopher A. Bardiewicz, Benjamin D. Desilets, Paul F. Fisher, Richard B. Janah, Gregory R. Goodrich, Evan T. James, Bradley S. Courthouse, Elmer C. Krause, Keith M. Mopin, Joshua D. Palmer, Eric P. Perot, Brian D. Slavenas, Bruce A. Smith, Ian W. Stewart, Jacob L. Frazier, James E. Groves III, Mark A. Simpson, and W. Ryan Owens. Next, non-hostile active duty losses. As I recite the honored names of those who have lost their lives while actively serving our nation, Mr. G. Edward Murphy, father of veteran Nicholas J. Murphy, will be presenting the wreath in their honor. Mr. Murphy will be escorted by Judge Michael McCuskey and Judge Stephen Corey. Scott G. Barber, Michael A. Barrett, Dennis E. Billingsley, Randall L. Broshears, Larry G. Buell, Misty D. Chambers, Thomas A. Clark, Larry L. Day, Edward L. Ellis Jr., Gregory N. Frank, Martin D. Gammer, Charles E. Gerard, Jamani J. Gibson, Charles R. Hudson, Victor D. Humbles, Gregory A. Irwin, Leroy T. Jackson, Seneca B. Johnston, John C. Call, Gregory D. Kirkman, Howard L. Levitt, William E. Martini, James Marvin, Ted M. Maston, Nicholas J. Murphy, James I. Myers, Todd D. Nicholson, Terry L. Nixon, Gregory C. Nati, Lloyd W. Norris Jr., Ronald A. Parker, Frank C. Pascal Jr., Brian L. Perry, Charles L. Pillman, Paul H. Pittman, Danny L. Quinn, Daniel J. Roberts, Andre M. Robinson, David E. Russell, Andrew R. Fleepseek, Stephen W. Thiebert, Jeffrey A. Vogel, James R. Walden III, James R. Wallace, Daniel L. Weiser, William D. Whitby Jr., James E. White, and Sean W. Warner. And that concludes our list of honor names. Thank you.
you, Dave. This time, we're proud to present taps of the firing. As we conclude this morning, I will be very brief. I thought over the last weeks, as a member of the committee, what is a memorial? You can look at a definition, something meant to help people remember. But over the last week, I've had the opportunity, again, it's probably my age, they let me park as state's attorney near the courthouse. And so when I leave, I have an opportunity to drive out. And over the week, I've had the real benefit to see what the value of a monument is. Because I witnessed a young black lady stand by herself in silent reflection, standing, watching, just looking. And then later in the week, I saw a father, a mother, and a child again stand, reflect, look at the memorial. And then finally I saw a lady in red shorts and a white top stand reverently with her head bowed. And I got a sense of what it is. None were talking, all were reflecting, appeared to be praying, and I thought, hopefully it gives them a sense of peace, a sense that they can come here to reflect on their loved ones. And so the value is priceless. I thank you all for coming today. Please come back.